Listen well. A king cannot lead by standing still. A king pushes onward always, accepting the consequences and never looking back. That said, a king can accept nothing without first accepting himself. Should he stand still, I ask you to stand by him and lend him a hand, as his friend and as his brother. Please, take care of my son.
I'm afraid I must ask your forgiveness.
What's up everyone, Russell here taking a look at episode Ignis, which is supposed to be the final piece of DLC for Final Fantasy 15, or at least it was the case until the recent anniversary event where they announced there's going to be a second season pass with additional episodes, episode Arden being the first of which. So at the very least it's the conclusion to the add-on content or episodes for the first season pass and the Band of Brothers, so Gladiolus, Prompto, and Ignis with this DLC. So this DLC story takes place in essentially the one that most people assumed was going to be for Ignis, and that is there's a pivotal moment in the story for quite a few characters in Altissia, but in particular Ignis goes through something that isn't really showcased, and this DLC is showing how that came to be. And I would say it delivers in that respect. Like, it does have an interesting narrative reason for why certain things happen in that story, and it is cool how certain characters show up, and the overall kind of story in this admittedly very brief DLC. But one thing they've been doing with all these DLC is the combat styles completely changed to match the character. So Ignis got quite a few new abilities. He can equip 3 daggers of different elements. So we have a fire element, which basically that one is for taking on one-on-one type combat. So when you're versing certain enemies, you can use the fire one to preferably just target them, and I believe it does more damage. Then you have the ice blade, which has a more like surround, like area effect type slash to each attack, and because of that, it's more obviously useful against groups of enemies. And then the lightning one is essentially what replaces, or kind of replaces, like Noctis's warp strike ability. So you've got the lightning, and then that essentially has you zipping around, attacking people. So basically, I typically use that one to close in on enemies, or if I was trying to kind of separate myself from their attacks. So you've got those 3. On top of that, you have the ability to select multiple supers, as you can in the main game. This one of them is one of Ignis' already like connecting onto Noctis anyway, and that is ability to like upgrade your element strength. So this one, it just randomly assigns to one of your elements, so it might be like the fire attacks are just stronger now, or the ice attacks or whatever. So when you use that one, it's just randomly assigned, and then that ability is more useful, so you want to kind of prioritize that. And the other one is essentially a high jump, so it just jumps in the air, does kind of like a Dragoon Lance type attack, falls from the sky, lands on something. So that's basically like a one-hit kill for quite a lot of the bosses. Now the other thing that's actually new is an ability called Total Clarity. So Ignis can either like concentrate and allows him to generate this meter up, or it'll just naturally generate through combat. And essentially when he does build it up, he can do his like targeting type attacks, where he'll find a weakness in the enemy and he'll hit them multiple times. So that ability you can either generate yourself, or it'll just generate naturally in combat, and then of course trigger it, and that'll take care of an enemy. I'll do a lot of damage. With the exception of these, combat's feels quite similar to Noctis and Gladiolus. Prompto was very different in how that one worked, with the shooting mechanic. But this one, it's more melee stuff, so it's quite similar. They do introduce a grappling hook though, which at the very least makes the traversal of the Altissia quite different. So you get a grappling hook, and you're essentially Batmaning up. So you're grappling hook up to these points. So instead of doing Noctis's warping to like higher points, you're literally grappling up. I think it's kind of combining that Assassin's Festival DLC where they had you warping and then climbing things. It's basically like combining those two together. So now you warp and on top of buildings. So you can just travel around Altissia. And there's a couple things to do in Altissia. There's like, at least in the very first part of the gameplay, it's an open little area, and there's like chests to find things, items you can buy in shops. Items literally all over the damn place. And you can just grapple around and pick up these different treasures. Take on bad guys. Now the enemies don't respawn though, so it's kind of limited in that respect. You can only pick up so many things, buy so many things, and take out so many enemies before there isn't really much to do in Noctis here. So it isn't like just heaps of ways of different enemies. And of course, it's all Niflheim specific soldiers, so you're not versing like these big monsters like Baham or something showing up or something. So it isn't the coolest enemies in the game, I guess is the way I'd probably put it. Now, the reason you're kind of defeating or attacking a lot of these enemies is because in that very brief area at the start, you've got these grids. So you can do this analysis thing where you're seeing which occupied areas are basically Niflheim being attacked at the moment, and you can essentially just clear them out, and then it'll come back onto Artilsia's control. So you have that as an option, so you can kind of clean up the different areas. It's something to do. It's not like the most compelling content in the world, but it looks kind of cool when you bring the green up and you clear an area. But otherwise, you're trying to progress through and obviously get yourself to Noctis, who has been knocked out after taking on the Leviathan fight, as that's literally the timepiece. So shit's going on in the background. You've got the Titans like attacking Niflheim's thing. So visually, it's pretty cool looking in the background. Often there's just visual spectacles going on with all the Niflheim ships shooting, barraging attacks against the Titans and whatnot. Now, eventually, as you progress through it, there is a bit where they mix it up, I guess, a bit with a boat section, but it's very minimalistic. So you get on a boat and you're essentially told to go to these points. You do have control, but it's on such a grid that really you can just go around in circles and that's about it. But it's kind of cinematic. It's so short though, so it barely isn't anything. But yes, at one point you do get on a boat and kind of like drive past the Titan in order to try and make your way to Noctis. The other combat thing they add in, which is quite cool, and you get it by buying certain items, is your third ultimate super. And the ultimate super for Ignis is literally cooking a new recipe. Literally spelled with a H. So they've been listening to those memes and they literally implemented it for Ignis, which is quite funny. It is funny just watching it. So once you have that ability by buying these cooking utensils, you literally like build out like a cooking deck, and he's cutting things and drinking stuff. And then it's, for far as I can tell, it's just random. So you might get buffers, and you can actually get negatives. So you can screw up, and so you get actually negated effects instead of positive ones. So it's like a bit of a risk, but some of them were very powerful. One of them was like you just constantly get total clarity, so you can just absolutely decimate all enemies. But I mean, in general, you've got so many goddamn items that it's not hard at all. You can just keep using health potions, that kind of stuff anyway. So it's not really a struggle in that respect. But it is definitely a very funny visual, seeing him cook the recipes. Now there's also one other special attack that's added, and that's because Ravis is also a pretty big part of this story, or at least this episode. And so when Ravis shows up, he joins you, and he's your assist character, and that allows you to do a new assist special ability, which essentially does like this lightning punch type thing. But in general, it is cool. As brief it is, admittedly, you don't have it for that long. It is cool fighting alongside Ravis in various kind of combat scenarios and whatnot. But in general, the DLC was quite good. It's very short. I mean, you completed it in less than 2 hours. Probably a lot quicker than that, honestly, if you're not exploring the open, like, Artilsia area at the start. It's quite short. But I definitely enjoyed it. It added little bits to the story, and made, I think, Ignis' sacrifice more impactful than it was, certainly in the main game, where it wasn't really explained to you. It was just like, oh, he did something that was upsetting, but you didn't see it happen. This you do see what happens, and it is pretty cool. Now, what's really good though, and I didn't expect it, and that's why I quite like this, was once you do complete it, you get an alternative history or ending, basically. And not even for this, like the episodes, for the game. So you basically can play the final part in the chapter again, and you have a choice. And if you make the other choice, it explores a whole new area. And you go to this new area, and new stuff happens, and particularly you get new backstory on Arden that has not been explained, as far as I remember, in the story at all. You could speculate that this stuff happened, but it wasn't definitely clear. And it's got me definitely excited for what episode Arden's going to be, as I hope it's potentially something in the past, as opposed to in the current story. But that was very cool, and has a drastically different conclusion as they kind of jump cut to the end of the game and have an alternate conclusion to the story, which was unexpected to say the least. I don't know if it's one of those, like, I don't think it's like a canon idea where it's like it's a never-ending loop cycle, and this is a different cycle of something that could happen, or an alternative history or something like that. I think it was just like here's a different ending for fans who maybe weren't happy with the original ending and they wanted one of this type of style, which was very cool. I really like that they put that in there. It was a good idea for DLC, just like kind of whack it in there as a different ending that doesn't need to connect to anything really, and just go, this is something that could happen. And you go, oh, that's cool. And the other thing, of course, with these DLC is every one of them had a tough enemy to face, and this one, whoo, oh boy, did they put a tough bad guy in there, and that is you fight Noctis. So the other ones were Core and Aranea in the Prompto Gladius ones, and Noctis is a freaking challenge. You don't have anything you can really get used to abuse him, so most of the time you are just trying to dodge his attacks. Like, he's relentless. He's got all of his abilities from the main game, essentially. No, I'm pretty sure he has all of them, and then he's switching between all his weapons, and then when you get him like halfway, which by the way, it takes so long to get him halfway, because he's constantly dodging your attacks, and you're trying to hit him, but you're trying to survive, because his attacks kill in like 3 hits. He gets his armature blades out, and he's suddenly doing armature chains with like the Gladius and Prompto, like assisting him, and all this kind of stuff. It's so difficult. Eventually, Ravis shows up, and that's how I was in the video, was Ravis joining in the fight, but I don't know if you beat him quick enough, he won't show up. I mean, I'm guessing that's probably the case, but it was cool, him showing up and one assisting. And also, the other thing that's interesting, it's in Hammerhead. So it's not in, like, Otissia or the other place you go to. So it's just in Hammerhead from the start of the game, and you can just literally, like, grapple on top of the, like, the Hammerhead shark, like, garage thing. Very intense fight. I'd say probably the hardest fight in Final Fantasy 15, period. Yeah, Comrades had a very tough fight at the end. This one I would say is tougher. The other thing that was included with this DLC, indirectly I guess, is they added a character swap mode to the main game. So now that they've got all 3 episodes out and each character has their own move style, you can now play all of them in the main game. So essentially you just go to the like ability tree, Ascension Growth, I think is what they're called, and you unlock each character. It costs like nothing. There's like ability points or whatever. And then you can, in combat, switch between them. And they have their playstyles from each of their respective DLCs, which, for the most part, well, it's really cool that you can do it, and it certainly like adds a lot to what the game originally was, with suddenly being able to just literally switch between them. I think Prompto's the only one where, when you switch to him, his controls are different. So suddenly I'm pushing the wrong buttons because I'm trying to do the attacks the other ones do, and he's all more about shooting, and the buttons aren't even mapped to the same controls. So I think he was the most jarring, at least with respect to switching between the characters. But it was cool switching to Gladiolus, seeing him do stuff, and Ignis cooking a recipe. It was definitely quite funny to see happen when you're fighting like these big creatures or whatever. But I have really enjoyed like what they've been doing with the game in general, just adding bits and pieces, new DLC, to try and make a better content. Like, I know they have the PC version coming out, which is supposed to have all this contained in it. I don't think it's supposed to contain the Season 2 stuff, so that's going to have to, it comes with what it's got. But I definitely think everything they have done, them collectively together, if you bought the Season Pass, with Comrades, all these episodes, I think they've been worth it. And I think episode Ignis might be the most worth it in the context of a story, especially that alternate ending. I think it adds a lot, even though it's potentially not a real thing. It definitely explains some things for Arden, and I think set context for what his character might be in that episode arc, or where it might be placed at least. So if you've got that Season Pass, I would say definitely get on episode Ignis. I doubt you'll be disappointed, especially if you've enjoyed the core Final Fantasy experience. There's definitely some interesting stuff there. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and give us any feedback as we try and improve our content and possibly make something better. And of course, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you come back for some more.
Oh, what good is a world that only ever lets you down? Why not end it all right here?
I swore an oath to stand with Noct and keep him safe. Whatever it takes, I will protect him.